Hi, hello, and welcome to our today's Supercharge event. We, as a CRM vendor, are talking about topics like relationships, marketing, service, sales. And today we want to talk about sales prospecting, personal brands on LinkedIn, and how to get revenue from LinkedIn. So I have invited Matthias Schaper. Hello, Matthias.
Hello,
Um, Hi, she's founder of SDRs of Germany and former SDR at Salesloft. But Matthias, maybe you introduce yourself and maybe you can tell already something about the typical role as an SDR.
of course. So yes, my name is Mattia. As you might be able to hear from my accent, I am German, living in the UK for almost 8 years. Facebook reminded me the other day. I was a little bit shocked. But I started my career in software sales in 2020, just at the start of the beginning. So I was an SDR for a year at Verity, an Austrian company. We were selling marketing analytics software to enterprise customers, and for a very long time, I was like, okay, I'm an SDR now, but what does this actually mean? And I was so confused because people were asking me like, hey, Mattia, are you sales or are you marketing? Like, what do you actually do? And I was always like, do you know what? I don't really know. Like, am I sales or am I marketing? And the more I got to know the role of the SDR, I realized it's neither. I'm not really sales and I'm not really marketing. I'm somewhere in between, and I think the term demand generation is suits the role of the SDR quite well, right? We are the people that are going out, that are looking for prospects that are having a problem that our product can solve, and we are basically generating demand and awareness for the company. So very top of funnel orientated. And I realized that I remember going into the office the first day, and I walked in and I was like, man, this can't be so hard. Like, I just need to speak to a couple of people and book some meetings. And then very quickly I realized, damn, this is a little bit harder than I thought it would be, because people don't really want to speak back to me, right? And I remember going to my SDR manager and asking him, hey, like, tell me, how does this work, right? Like, you've been in business development for a very long time now. And he told me all of his tips, and I was like, cool, like I'm gonna use these tips now, and I'm gonna get so good at this. And then reality hit a second time, and I realized that what worked for my business development manager like 5 years ago does not work today anymore, right? Because there were so many changes. The sales world had changed so much with the pandemic that the things that we used 5 years ago just wouldn't work anymore. So since then, I've really been trying to get to the forefront of sales development and always finding out, okay, what works today? Because even me myself, I know what I used a year ago might not be as effectively today, right? And then with that, I was like, okay, I think I don't know anything. I don't know everything. I want to get people together so that we can all share our wisdom, because I think all of us have different strengths, right? Like, I'm really good at LinkedIn. Some other people are really good at cold calling. Like, why don't we put all of the skills together in a community and we talk about it? And that's sort of how SDRs of Germany came about, which is a community that focuses specifically on the DACH market and how to do SDRing and cold outreach within the DACH area. And it started as a hobby, and 2 months ago I quit my job as an SDR and went full-time into SDRs of Germany and into the sales development world, which was a scary decision, but I haven't looked back yet.
Yeah, but you mentioned you were as a role going out to reach out to prospects or to new contacts. So you mentioned the pandemic as well. So before the pandemic, what kind of channels did you use? Was it email? Was it telephone? So cold calling, or what did you use?
I mean, I didn't use anything because before the pandemic, I was still at uni, right? Like I had just finished my bachelor's when the pandemic started. So I can only imagine what it was like, and I feel like it's always difficult to imagine, because for someone like me that started in the pandemic, even the thought of having to go to the office 5 times a week, for me, that's like unimaginable, right? I'm like, what? People used to go to the office 5 times a week. So before the pandemic, from what I know, it was a lot more face-to-face, right? Like people would actually drive to the office to give a demo and to have that first contact with a client, which to me now is unimaginable. Like, why would I waste my time commuting from one end of the city or even to another city to just give a demo when I can just do that perfectly fine on Zoom, right? So I think in general, it's become much more virtual. Everything that we do, well, in most industries that we operate in now, everything is virtual. And I mean, back in the day, we were using phone and email, right? Those were the 2 channels. Whereas now, with all the technology that has come about, and with completely transferring into this virtual space, there's so much more noise and there's so many more possibilities. Like nowadays, we have stuff like LinkedIn, right? Social selling, personal branding, video selling, all of these things that a couple of years ago no one would have imagined. So I do think there was a little revolution, which was nice. It gave us a lot of new possibilities on doing outreach, but on the flip side, it also caused so much more noise, right? Back in the day, a C-level decision maker maybe would get, I don't know, 3-5 cold calls a day, whereas now Harvard and MIT did the study a year ago. They said they were looking at the average C-level executive, right? And they found out that the average C-level executives get around 128 sales touches a day. Now, this was in the US, I think. So maybe in Europe it's a bit different, but it just shows that sheer amount of noise. When someone gets 128, whether that is email, cold calls, or LinkedIn, it just becomes so much more difficult for us as salespeople to stand out of this crowd, right? It's such a sea of people and everyone is sort of the same, and a lot of people are doing the same. So it becomes less about what do I say on the phone and more about how do I even get to speak to that person? Like, how do I even get that attention of that person? So a lot of the things have changed in the B2B sales world.
Yeah, so, and we talked about telephone and you mentioned LinkedIn. So let's say these are the 2 channels, or let's say we take email as well. So do you say, hey, you see more success using one, or do you say, hey, I'm using today more than one channel, or I'm using LinkedIn, and when I see LinkedIn is not working, I take the phone, or I'm writing an email. So how are you dealing with it?
Yeah, I think there's not necessarily one answer. There's never one size fits all, right? Especially not in sales. I think it always depends on what you're selling and which industry you're selling to, right? Like, let's take me for an example. I was selling to sales leaders for a very long time, and obviously those sales leaders are very active on LinkedIn, such as maybe recruiting and marketing. Whereas your typical accountant might not really be on LinkedIn. So it wouldn't make much sense to reach him on LinkedIn, right? So you always need to figure out, okay, I always ask myself that question, right? Where does my prospect congregate? What is their preferred channel? It doesn't necessarily, it's not much about what my preferred channel is. It's more about what is my prospect's preferred channel. Because my preferred channel could be LinkedIn, but if I'm selling to accountants, that doesn't really get me anywhere, right? Because then I would probably rather need to pick up the phone. So it really depends. In general, I always say a single channel outreach doesn't work in today's world anymore, right? It's we call it a multi-channel outreach, or a multi-channel approach, where we combine different channels, right? It's not just about one or the other channel. It's about all of the channels together, which is what made the SDR role so much more complex, right? Because back in the day, we just had to manage like an email and the phone channel, whereas now we have all of these different channels. And it also becomes a lot about organization, right? Like, how do I make sure that so now it becomes more about managing all of these different channels and finding a balance between those channels.
So to LinkedIn, I know you have mentioned it's not the one fits all. You need different channels to approach different people and roles. So when you started and when you recognized that LinkedIn could be and is a channel to reach out to people, how did you start working? I guess there were some challenges, or it was not working as you have planned, maybe. So how did you start all this? What were your experiences?
Of course. I'll tell you a little story about when I first realized that I might need to do some more LinkedIn. So when I first started, I had no idea what I was doing, right? Like I was spraying and praying, and it was all, especially at my company back then, it was all about activity levels, right? Who has the most activity levels? So that was what I was trying to achieve. I always wanted to be the first one on the leaderboard, right? So I would send thousands of emails a day and like do cold calls very mindlessly and without much intention, because when you incentivize SDRs on activity, that's what they go out and do, right? If you incentivize them on quality, then that's what they do. We were incentivized on quantity, so that's what we did. A lesson that I think is very, very valuable. And I then discovered LinkedIn. My VP of sales was like, "Hey, you should do LinkedIn." I was like, "Okay, cool, another channel." So I used LinkedIn very much like I used email, like just sending the same message out to 100, 200 people, right? And the first months as an SDR, I hit my target and stuff because I worked very hard. Like I would wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning and work till 9 to get to my target. And I always made it, but it was a lot of effort. I think back then my target was something like 10 opportunities, 10 demos a month or something. And then I went on a live show. It was called Gap Sell Keenan. Gap Sell, like Keenan is an American sales influencer, and he wrote Gap Sell or Gap Selling, one of the best books I've ever read about sales. So if anyone's out there that hasn't read it yet, go and read it. It's phenomenal. And he has this live show, right, where people go on as reps and they sell their product with his gap selling method. And in a state of delusion, it was Corona. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So that show was live streamed on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and then later it was put on like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and stuff like that. That was like my first thing that I did on LinkedIn. And I was absolutely frightened. I had like, I think 2 or 3 tequila shots before I went on there. It was also American time. So I had to wait. I think it was like 9:45 or something that the event was happening. So at the entire day where I was waiting to go on the show, and I was so nervous. And I went on the show, and he was very, very nice to me. I made the sale. I did it quite well. And afterwards, I went on LinkedIn, and I think 8, 9 people had messaged me that they thought my product was really, really cool and what I had said about my product, and that they wanted a demo. So within an hour of me doing something on LinkedIn, I reached like 80%, 90% of my target of the month, where before that I was putting in so much time into this, right, and really struggling. And this 1 hour got me to 80, 90% of my target. And I was like, damn, like, what if I could do this every week, right? Like I would be making so much money from the commission. But obviously you can't do that every week, right? You can't go on a live show, or Keenan wouldn't have me every other week. So that's when I realized, okay, if I just have a bigger audience, if instead of just having a one-on-one channel, I go into a bigger audience and I reach more people, then obviously the outcome would be different, right? And I would save time. So that's when I really, really started thinking about it. And I had looked at other personal brands. When I started at Sales Love, there was Charlotte Johnson, who's really great at personal branding. There's Tom Boston. So I had a lot of people around me that also did this. And I was like, okay, cool. Let's do this, right? And in the beginning, I was just trying out everything. And it was intimidating, because I think everyone that's ever thought about personal branding has a couple of limiting beliefs in them, right? I remember me thinking, well, I'm only an SDR. I have a year of experience. Why would people listen to me on LinkedIn, right? Who would follow me? I need to be an expert to build a personal brand. And then also I was like, where am I going to come up with the ideas for content? And do I have the time? Everyone that is an SDR, they know how stressful the SDR role itself already is. So that was very difficult for me to overcome these limiting beliefs. And at some point I was just like, do you know what? Forget it. Like, I'm just going to do this. Whatever happens, happens. Right. And that's when I started it. And in the beginning, it was a lot of hustle, right? Like I always say, things that are worth having, they don't come easy, right? So I spend a lot of time analyzing, okay, what do people post on there? How does this work? Like, how can I build a following? All of these kind of things. And the first couple of months were a hustle, and I didn't necessarily have an immediate impact, right? Like, it wasn't like I started on LinkedIn and then I could stop doing all of my other SDRing, right? Like, that took some time. I had to still do my emails. I still had to do my cold calls. And then when I got back home, I would do my LinkedIn and stuff. But at some point, I was really like, oh my God, why am I doing this? Like, does this make any sense? And I was this close to quitting. And I was like, no, I am not a quitter. I am just going to continue doing this. At some point, it will pay off. And then after a couple of months, I had the first people that were messaging me about my posts, and they were saying, hey, Mattia, you talk about sales, like you also sell a sales software. I want to know what you sell. Like, I can relate to the things that you post, right? And then slowly, this concept of social proofs comes in, right? Like, when we go online shopping, there's reviews, and like we can see how many people bought this product and stuff like that, and it gives us confidence. Like, how many of us have already bought an Instagram product from an Instagram ad that was crappy, but because the marketing was good and there was testimonials and there was social proof that other people liked it, we bought it and we fell for it. Like yesterday I fell for it. I realized that there was the social proof concept. And if I only got a few people to believe in me and to buy from me, and I can publicly display that, other people will be like, they are following her, I should follow her. They are buying her product, I should buy her product. Yeah. And that's when you then perfect it. So the first couple of months are a hustle. You are going to put some work in. But after that, and nowadays I say it was one of the best decisions of my life to start doing this, because it gives you so much visibility and gives you so many opportunities. And I would never be where I am right now without starting on LinkedIn. So I'm very grateful for the platform.
So do you think, talking about your personal brand today, did you sit there before and made a concept, what should my personal brand look like? As I hear from you, it was kind of a development, and that at some point your personal brand somehow was born, and you knew what are your things to talk about, how to talk about things, how to reach out to people. So it's a kind of a development.
Yeah, I mean, so what I did was I analyzed a lot of other personal brands, right? I went on LinkedIn, and like the people that today are my friends, like Morgan J. Ingram and Jared Robin, even Tom Boston, Charlie Johnson, like all of these people that have big personal brands, I looked up to them and I analyzed them. I was like, okay, what do they post? How do they present themselves? Which post also works well for them? Because sometimes I would see, I don't know, Morgan has 150,000 followers by now, I think. And sometimes he would only get 20 likes on his post, and sometimes he would get 1,000. So I started really thinking about, why did this post get 1,000 likes? And why did this post get 20 likes? Or what is he usually talking about? What are people saying about him in his comments, right? So I did that a lot, analyzing what other people do. I think that's always a good place to start. And then I was also thinking a lot about, what is the kind of content that I want to see? And I tried not to think about all the other people, right? I tried to focus on me. And when I thought about it, I was remembering how I felt when I first started as an SDR. And I would go on LinkedIn, and everyone was just talking about how great they are, and how they've just hit target, and how they've just closed £6 million worth of a deal, right? And everything was so great. And it intimidated me as a new SDR, right? I remember reading a post that was saying like, oh, if your cadence has less than a 20% reply rate, just delete your cadence and do something else. And I was sitting there and I was like, my reply rate is about like 0.5% at this point, 2 weeks into the SDR role. And I felt intimidated by it. as I grew into the SDR role, and I was talking to other people, and I saw the reality, not just on LinkedIn, I realized everyone has those problems, right? Like, no one's reply rate is usually always at 20%, right? Everyone had a rejection on the phone here and there. That's totally normal. So when I thought about what I want to do, I was like, I want to write about how I actually feel and what it's like to be in sales. And I want to talk about my failures so that other people don't feel alone, right? And that's then what I did. And luckily people liked it. I remember my first viral post was a post where I was talking about how I had made, I don't know, I think 100 calls or something, and so many people were rude to me, and I felt so demotivated, and I talked about how I was motivating myself for the next day. And it got like, I don't know, 2,500 likes and over 1 million views. And then I was like, and everyone was commenting. Everyone was like, I feel exactly the same. And like, yes, someone said to me, leave me alone yesterday on the call as well. And I was in a slump. And first of all, it made me feel really good, because I was like, damn, I'm not alone, right? Like, we are all having these challenges and we can overcome it together. But it was also great because it made other people feel like they're not alone, right? And I think that's a lot about personal branding, is about how you make other people feel. A lot of people make that false assumption that you need to be an expert and you only need to post experty posts. And I've had those comments from other sales influencers where they were like, oh, you only post like stories about yourself and you get 600 likes, and I sit here and I'm thinking about my content for 2 hours and, you know, doing 7 tips for new SDRs or something, and I only get 10 likes. And I was like, yes, because it's not necessarily what you can teach them, because and I love this is something that Stephen Bartlett always says, the host of the Diary of a CEO podcast. He always says people don't like to be lectured. People want to be taken on a journey. And that's what you need to do in personal branding, right? Because if you come in there and you're like, I know everything and I'm perfect and here are all of my tips and learn from me. Yeah, you know, people don't, they might read it and they might take on board the tips, but they're not going to become a fan of you. They're not going to follow you because they don't want to feel lectured. And if they have that feeling that person is perfect, it reminds them that they are not perfect. And it's also stupid because we all know no one is perfect, right? So I always say being authentic is the biggest thing in personal branding, like actually you being you, and that comes with sharing the mistakes you've made and sharing the flaws that you have and that you're working on, because first of all, that's something that you can also learn from, right? And second of all, it makes you real and it makes you relatable. Like if you think about all your favorite superheroes or the best characters in movies that you liked, they all have made mistakes and they all have flaws, which is why you love them so much, right? Why you can relate to them. And I think you said this to me before we started the stream. You said you were able to relate to my last post, right? Yeah. That's what it's about. Like you need to be able to have that human to human interaction and be relatable. And forget about you having to be an expert and you having to be perfect. The best thing is you just being yourself and sharing your journey, because then also, and this was one of the limiting beliefs that I said at the beginning, right? Where I thought, oh, where am I going to get these ideas and where do I have the time to do this? We debunk that self-limiting belief if we just share what we think and what our journey is, because then we don't need to have a content calendar and plan our content. One of the most asked questions that I get on my LinkedIn is, Mattia, what does your content calendar look like? And I'm like, please, like, delete that vocabulary. Content calendars are the death of creativity. When I do a post, and I post Mondays and Wednesdays, I sit down Monday, 8 a.m., or sometimes even on Sunday, and I just think about what happened to me last week. How did I feel? Did I make a mistake? What did I learn? And that's my content, and that's why it's organic, and that's why it's authentic, and that's why people can relate to it. And that is so much more important than you being an expert while you're building your personal brand. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is what I see as well. When we talk about social selling and we talk about, we have some trainings about social selling, it's all about a structured process.
Yeah.
It's all about begin reaching out to your network, finding relevant people, write to them. I guess most of them get annoyed by getting all these invites, but have a structured process. And I think this is the thing that it's killing creativity. And what I hear from you is find a way and maybe create a mindset for your own. What do I want to present? What do I want to share? How can I be authentic to talk about my experiences? And the rest comes in. So people like the post. Then it's of course much easier to get in touch with them or connect with them when you are already have some reactions to your posts as well. So, and we have a question here in the chat. So you're talking about what do you post about yourself, and yes, we talked about some algorithms. So we talked about what and in social selling trainings as well, what works, what does not work. So, and when you comment or like other posts or share other posts, so are you doing this as well? Is this part of your daily work to support others or share other content?
Yeah, absolutely. Most people overestimate posting. Most people are so caught up in, oh, what do I post? What do I post? Right? When I always say it's very possible to build a personal brand just by being active, without posting, just by being active and commenting and like sprinkling yourself all over LinkedIn, right? So that you appear in the feed. It is not possible though to build a personal brand by just posting. By just logging in once a day, posting and then leaving. That will never happen, right? Because as much as LinkedIn is a social networking platform, social networking is all about building relationships and showing up and supporting people, right? So I really made it a mission to find the people that I really, really, really like on LinkedIn, connect with them, and then engaging with them on the feed to show that you're there and to support you. Because it's about how you make people feel, right? Like when you think about whether like the last time you posted a LinkedIn post, when someone liked it, you felt good about it, right? And when someone put a comment on it, you felt heard and you felt recognized, right? And that's what it's about. When I see a post, and like I a lot engage obviously with the content that I also like people that are sharing their mistakes and people that are being very authentic, and I like it, and I put a comment that makes them feel great and it makes me feel great, right? So engaging and being active and maintaining those relationships is a massive part, if not the biggest part in personal branding. Don't ever underestimate that. So even if right now you're a little bit intimidated to post on LinkedIn, and I completely understand that. I still until this day, and I've posted hundreds of times on LinkedIn, when I have a post that's a little bit controversial, where I know maybe some people won't agree with what I say, I sweat and I'm like, oh, I don't know, this is a professional network. Everyone is going to see this. It's so normal, and everyone will feel like that. So if that's you right now and you really feel like you can't get over that fear of posting, then just start by commenting. Just put yourself a goal of, going on LinkedIn once a day, leaving 5-6 comments on people whose content you really like, and be careful to not just say, oh, thanks for sharing, or great insight, because we all know then you really didn't take any time to even read the post. I'd be surprised, right? Make them meaningful, make them relatable, and put some effort into it.
Okay. And what I see in your posts is that you are sharing sometimes like personal messages, like in mails. So when you see, okay, you are in a conversation with someone and reached out to him, I know that you are using memes a lot. So, I mean, sometimes you need to have the guts to communicate like this. I guess most of the salespeople think, okay, I have to write like an email, more formal when I write on LinkedIn or am in a communication. So this was interesting when we talked before as well, that you say, hey, I analyzed my communication and what kind of communication type worked. So okay, maybe it was the sixth message or touch point. So, but you see, it's converting. So you took this touch point or content and used it a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I think that was a really key moment in my career as an SDR when, as you said in the beginning, I'd be like, dear Mr. Smolin, hope you are well. I have a wonderful product that I want to show you. Do you have time next Wednesday, like 3 o'clock, right? Because that's what people teach us, and that's what we see, right? And we're new to a professional world, so we think we need to be professional. And it really wasn't working for me that well. And I mean, I got to my target and stuff, but I just didn't enjoy it much, because I always felt that that's not really me, the way that I communicate with my prospects and stuff. And I just wasn't enjoying it much. And then I think this is what I told you. One day I was looking at how I communicate on WhatsApp, for example, with my close friends, and how I write my emails. And I was sitting there and I was like, damn, those are completely two different people. You would never be able to tell that this email was coming from me. And that's where I was just like, okay, why are people communicating with me? Why are my friends, why do they like me? They like me because I'm open, and because I have no filter, and because, I like to crack a joke and stuff like this. And I was like, if that's what people like, why don't I just do exactly that in my outreach as well? Like, why do I put that mask on, and why do I try to be someone else? And that's when it clicked. And that's when I was really looking forward also to do my messaging. And then I did a lot of GIFs and memes with people, like in my personal communication, because again, it's relatable. You see a picture and it's funny, and you smile and you feel good when you see it, right? So that was the exact same thing that you can use in prospecting. So I was like, cool, if I could do a cool, funny meme and my prospect open my message, and instead of being like, oh, another automated message, being like, huh, this is funny, and then smiling, I knew that I was already halfway in there, right? And that's what I think is super important. Instead of trying to be someone else, and instead of putting a professional mask on, just be yourself. Like, just communicate like you would communicate with other people. I'm not saying communicate like, I don't know, you communicate with your friends Saturday night, 2 a.m., completely drunk. That's not what I'm saying. But in a way that you can just see that it's you, because that's how we connect. Like, humans connect to humans still. And because we used all of this automation and all of these technologies and all these templated messages, it's become very easy for our prospects to just dismiss it as spam, right? And not even see us as humans. So my mission was always to, first of all, make my prospect recognize that I could be your friend, your daughter, your nephew. I don't know, right? Like, I am a person, because then psychologically it's so much more difficult to reject that person, because now you can relate to them, right? But it's very easy if it's just a templated message, they haven't really taken the time to research you, to just be like, listen, leave me alone, unsubscribe. That's much, much easier that way.
And but did there, at any point, was there a conflict with when you worked for SalesLoft? Was there somehow a conflict that SalesLoft said, hey, Mattia, it's good what you are doing, and that you are sending memes to your network, but this is not us? Did you have the freedom to develop all this, or was it sometimes?
Yeah, I think that was the reason I cried when I handed in my notice at SalesLoft a couple months ago, because they were really exceptional at at first of all, recognizing that personal branding is an integral part of modern selling, and that it doesn't just create awareness for me, but also for them, right? Like I was generating, or like 100 to 200,000 views on a SalesLoft employee's profile every week. So we had people that applied to SalesLoft saying, I want to work at SalesLoft because I see Matthias posts online and I want to work in this environment. So it helped SalesLoft with brand awareness and with hiring as well, which obviously we all know is a big problem at the moment. A lot of companies are struggling with it, right? And Ollie Sharp, who was the VP of EMEA, he always embraced it, and he always said, Matthias, you do you. I love seeing someone that works at SalesLoft stand up for themselves and change something in the sales world. And I was always very grateful for all the freedom that they gave me. Because also, why wouldn't they? I was hitting target on the 4th, 5th day of the month. I was going to all these events and speaking for SalesLoft and stuff like that. Like there was really no reason for them to say, hey, Matthias, stop doing this, right? And I think if you're working at a company now that says you can't do this, then honestly, the job market is especially in Germany very, very hard. Like just look for another person, because another company, because no one has the right to tell you what to do on your LinkedIn profile and what not. It's really your own property. And if companies aren't quick enough to adapt and aren't quick enough to embrace this new world of selling, then they frankly don't deserve you.
Yeah, but still, and some employees say, hey, I don't want to do social selling. I don't want to use my personal account for selling. What do you say to those people, or to the companies who have to handle those people that are saying, hey, this is my profile, I'm not doing anything? It sounds sometimes like when you give them Informer days, this is the telephone, use the telephone for cold calling, and they say, no, I'm not using this telephone. Sometimes feels like that.
Yeah, I think my first reaction is always like, well, don't do it then. Like it's that's something I can't force you to do it, right? If you don't see it, then if you want to continue like this, then you can do that. But what I always say is that personal branding. So I make a very clear distinction between social selling and personal branding, right? I think social selling has a lot to do with your current job and selling the product that you are selling, and personal branding really doesn't have anything to do with your job. Personal branding has something to do with your career. That is what will foster your career. That is what will elevate your career. I mean, it's almost stupid just because I have a personal brand and I have 2 years of experience as SDRs. I got offered head of sales development for 200K a year, right? Like, again, that's social proof. Like, I don't think I'm ready to do a head of sales development role yet, but because other people think they follow me, they offer me these sort of careers, and usually by then people are like, what? Now I want to build a personal brand after you said that, right? So I think it's just about understanding, and this is probably the second most asked question on my LinkedIn is, okay, but how much can I post about my company? And I always say, I wouldn't post anything about your company. Honestly, if you analyze like all these posts on LinkedIn that are like, oh, look what company X has done, or here's a case study of company X. Have you ever seen a post like that go viral or have more than 10 likes? No, because no one really cares. And I've never done a post promoting SalesLoft, not once, even though I was generating so many inbounds through my posts. I've never done a single post about SalesLoft because that just wouldn't work. What you need to do when you combine personal branding and social selling is you talk about the problems and the situations that occur that your product can solve. So if I was setting out to write a post that would generate me new opportunities that would bring me to my target, I was always thinking about, okay, yesterday I had a call with a sales leader, and he was struggling to track KPIs, for examples, right? I would then write a post about that specific problem, and because people know I work at SalesLoft, I would at the bottom I would say something maybe like, you know, maybe I would mention SalesLoft, or I would say get in touch or something like this, and then people would get in touch, right? And then people would be like, do you know, and this is the basic of outreach anyways, right? If I just talk about myself in my outreach, no one will come back to me. But if I talk about a relatable problem that they're having, then they're interested in talking to me, because they don't care about my product. They care about the problem that they're having and about what they want to achieve, right? So it's the same concept when you post. Like, if you just talk about yourself and your product the entire time, no one will care. But if you talk about a problem that your product is solving, about an issue in your market, that's where people then are like, Matthias spoke about this problem the other day in her post. Let me message her. Maybe she has a solution. And then you go in with the sale, right? It's about pre-building these relationships, and it's a lot about trust and credibility as well, right? Like, I'm building trust and credibility with my audience, which on email or on phone is very, very, very difficult to do, but on LinkedIn, very easy to do, because I can speak about these problems that they are having. People are liking it. Social proofs comes in. And then, of course, next time the VP of sales are having a meeting and they're talking about this product, one of them is going to say, let's talk to Mattia about it, because I know she spoke about this in her post.
So yeah, and I see you spend a lot of time doing all this and developing this and make it more measurable for you. What about your colleagues? I mean, you haven't been the only SDR at SalesLoft, right? Or account executives were there as well. What did they say? I mean, you reached your targets within first week of a month, and they were still struggling maybe. What happened to them? Did it change their mindset somehow, or did they have the same mindset already?
I mean, so I think I have to say that all of the SDRs at SalesLoft are quite social. They all have somewhat of a LinkedIn presence, some more and some less, right? But in general, SalesLoft is an SDR company, right? Like, they sell an SDR tool. They're very SDR forward. So they've always been encouraging this, and we've always been encouraged. And I'd like to say, if I would have come in and be like, listen guys, look at this, what I do, then people would be like, I don't know. But I was always the one saying, why aren't you doing this? Like, do it. And you know, my colleague would be like, I feel intimidated. I don't know what I speak about. And then I would speak to him about exactly what I'm doing, and I would help him with it, right? And I wouldn't tell him what to post, because that doesn't work. In authentic personal branding, that doesn't work. But even just building up the confidence for them, right? Just being like, listen, you need to do this. You're going to do great at it. You have something to say. You have something valuable to say. You can do it. Forget about the fact that you're only 25 and you don't have 20 years of experience. Just put that out of your mind, because I didn't, right? So and in general, the SalesLoft culture was so great, which again is why I felt very heavy-hearted when I left, because everything was very encouraging within the SDR team, and we all worked very closely together, and it was very, very much a collaboration over competition, which I really, really liked.
So do you think it's something you can learn to be yourself on LinkedIn? Do you need a special mindset? So what do you tell people who say, I don't know if this works for me?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's totally something that you can learn. Like, I do a lot of personal branding coaching now. And I can give you the tools, right? And I can tell you how I did it, and I can tell you advice, and I can build you up. In the end, though, it comes down to you and how much you're willing to invest into this. I look back now, and yes, I had days where, or even periods of times where my social life was was a little bit less, right? Because I was working very hard, but now looking back at it and looking at all the opportunities that I got from personal branding, I'm saying it was 100% worth it, and I would do the exact same thing all the time. And I think this is what I'm trying to achieve with my personal brand, right? To build people up and to make them understand that they can do it, and that you don't need 20 years of experience. All you need to do is show up for yourself and do the things that are going to bring you forward, and that is investing some time into it and being authentically you. And with that, I also always say, don't overthink it. Like, I get asked so many questions, like, when is the best time to post, and like, how long should a comment be, like 8 words, 9 words? And I'm like, you know what, it really doesn't matter. LinkedIn favors good content, so concentrate on good content, concentrate on showing up, forget about the algorithm, forget about all of these things. Just be authentically you. And as easy as it sounds, I know it's not as easy, but don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah. And I mean, today you have more than 24,000 followers on LinkedIn. I have to mention that, of course. And I think it makes it much easier with such a network, not only to sell yourself, but sell your products as well, to fill your pipeline. And to reach your targets. I mean, we see that if you are inviting to an event, I mean, it's easier for you to get all these people invited or as a guest than maybe other companies or people are doing with not that large networks or reach on LinkedIn. So we need to start building this network today or yesterday, even better.
Yeah, I think what always stunned me was that personal brand is really what people say about you when you're not in the room, right? And that's why it worked so well also for me as an SDR, because people knew me and people knew I worked for SalesLoft. So even when and sometimes I didn't know those people, right? Like, they would follow me on LinkedIn, and 6 months later, they'd be in a discussion with their VP of sales, and they're thinking about buying a new sales tool, and what comes to their mind is my name, and then they would message me, right? And that's how I would generate those inbounds. And that's what is so great about it. With a personal brand, you can be in so many different rooms, you can be part of so many different conversations and route these people to you without actually having to be in these rooms, right? It gets you into these rooms so easily. And when you combine that with really being authentically you, then that's the best thing that you can do, because it nowadays it doesn't require me much time anymore, right? Like, I'm just being me, and I write the comments that I want to write, and I write the posts that I want to do, and I say what I want to say. And that's really the goal, and that's where you get to at the end. Even though those first months may be a bit rocky, and you might doubt yourself, and you might be like, oh, like, is this valuable? Do people like what I'm posting? Like, do they, a lot of the times I was sitting there, and LinkedIn has such a big reach. It's very difficult with like Instagram or Facebook to have such a big reach. Whereas with LinkedIn, sometimes you get 100,000, 200,000 views, and you're like, wow. And I would always remember how I sometimes sat there and someone would say something to me, and they would say it in like a little bit of a laughing way, right? They would be like, haha, yeah, you post a lot on LinkedIn. I don't know, it's a bit embarrassing. Where that was a bit hard for me in the beginning. And then I did a post a couple of months ago. I was like, I'm so glad that I never listened to these people that were laughing at me because I posted so much on LinkedIn, or people that were like, oh, did you see Mattia post again? Blah, blah, blah. Like, I was so glad that I didn't listen to them and that I just continued doing my thing, because I would have really regretted it if I didn't.
Yeah. So I think we get a lot of insights from your experience and your success stories as well. You talked about frustrations as well, or the journey that is it the right way, or how can I proceed? So how did you deal with this frustrations? How did you motivate yourself to go on? Was it the first the live show that you have, and you knew that you are able to reach your targets with LinkedIn? Was this your motivation, or how did you motivate yourself all the time?
Yeah, I think it's. I think I spent a lot of time on reflection, and I really realized that I just had some insecurities that were holding me back from a couple of times. And whenever I felt those insecurities coming up, I would just be like, "You are aware. This is an insecurity. This is not reality. You just continue doing it." And then also, and I think this is why I'm not so bad at sales. I'm very numbers driven, right? I'm very ambitious. Like, give me a goal and I will hit that goal. Like, I will do my best to do that, to hit that goal. So I was always setting myself goals as well. Like, I would be like, okay, by this time in 3 months, I want to have at least 10,000 followers, and I want to be on a podcast, and I want to be on this show. And then I would work towards that. And then once I got there, I would do my next goal, and my next goal would be 20,000. And then yesterday I hit my other goal, which was 25,000 followers. And then, you do a little celebration, and like, it makes you feel good, obviously. So I think because it is such a long journey, because it doesn't happen overnight, right? Having a consistent goal setting progress and tracking yourself so that you stay focused on where you want to be within the next 3 or within the next 6 months is super, super, super important to help yourself accountable. And then also, I was always being in those influencer communities, right? Very early in the beginning, I realized, and this is a concept by Russell Brown, where he always talks about when you want to grow your audience, first think about, where does your audience already congregate? Who is entertaining your audience? So I was always on the lookout. Like, my audience was salespeople, right? So I was always like, okay, where are all these salespeople? Which podcasts are they listening to? Which events are they going to? Who are the influencers? What are they posting about? So I would always try to be visible where they are visible, and think about, okay, cool. Ref Genius, for example, right? They're a big American sales community. They have 35,000 members, and they were on my list. I was like, this is an audience for me, 35,000 people. I need to get in front of there somehow. So I started building those relationships. So I started, messaging the founder of Ref Genius and building that relationship up with them. And yes, it takes some time, but then, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, Jared asked me to speak at RevCon, which is an event where I think 6,500 people or something signed up, and he asked me to speak at it. And I was like, wow, it took 10 months, but I made it. I got in front of that audience, right? So setting yourself these goals will help you keep accountable, and also being connected with these other influencers and creators, and you see what they are doing, and you are within this circle, right? And I firmly believe that the people that are surrounding you are the people that have a very, very big influence on you, right? So I was always very clear on, I am only surrounding myself with people that have a growth mindset, that also want to achieve things, that can help me be accountable as well. I would share my goals with them and be like, you know what, this is my goal, help me accountable. What is your goal? And having this open communication and really immersing yourself into this, I think is very, very, very important.
Yeah, I agree. And this is interesting that you say, I could have focused more on sales targets maybe, but you focused on, let's say, your personal brand, and your goal was your personal brand as well. Who do I want to be seen with, which podcast, which stage or event? I think this is great to support the company itself as well, having this personal brand. So we have a few minutes left, Mattia. Thank you for your time, and thank you for this live event and Supercharge event today. Do you have, let's say, I take with me today that it's not always a structured plan, that this is a success. So you need to be creative somehow. You need to be your own personal brand. You have to be authentic. Just don't care much about algorithm and all these things social selling people are telling us. So just be yourself and do what you like, and do when you like it. And when you have the idea, maybe send a short post about yourself, about your experience. And of course, in the next steps, next touch points, you can connect it with your product. But first, you have to build relationships. Yes. So, Mattia, thank you very much for your time again.
Absolutely.
Thanks for everyone joining us here. And yeah, hope you all have a great day. Thank you very much. Join us the next time as well.
See you guys. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.